The morning light streamed softly through the sheer curtains of Evelyn Carter's home, painting the walls in shades of gold. Everything about her life, at least on the surface, looked like a portrait of peace. The roses in her garden bloomed with careful perfection, the scent of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, and her daughter's laughter echoed faintly down the hall. For Evelyn, that sound had always been her anchor, the melody of her world, since her husband's passing 5 years ago. Lena had always been her reason to rise, her motivation to heal. When her husband, Richard, died in a car accident under unclear circumstances, Evelyn thought her heart had permanently cracked. For months she drifted through her home like a ghost, replaying every shared memory, every promise he made, and every moment she thought would last forever. But time has a strange way of covering wounds, not healing them, but burying them deep enough to forget they still hurt. Then came Daniel **. Handsome, articulate, and disarmingly polite, Daniel had entered their lives like a breath of fresh air. Evelyn first met him one sunny afternoon, when Lena brought him over for Sunday lunch. His smile was the kind that could light up a room, the kind that could make anyone believe he had nothing to hide. He pulled out chairs for both women, complimented Evelyn's cooking, and listened to her stories about Richard as though he genuinely cared. He looked at Lena with eyes so full of admiration that Evelyn's heart swelled with relief. After years of watching her daughter struggle with loneliness and self-doubt, she thought, finally she's found someone who will cherish her. Months passed, and Daniel became part of their family. He was attentive, always offering to help Evelyn with errands, always speaking gently, always present. When he asked for Lena's hand in marriage, Evelyn didn't hesitate to give her blessing. She saw in him the promise of stability, the kind she had lost when Richard died. The wedding was small but beautiful. In the photos, Lena looked radiant, her happiness almost glowing. Daniel stood beside her, smiling proudly, his arm protectively around her waist. Evelyn watched from the front row, tears glistening in her eyes. She whispered to herself, Richard, you'd be proud of her. But as the months went by, something subtle began to shift. It started with silence, small, unspoken things that crept into their conversations. Lena, once open and bubbly, grew quieter. Her laughter didn't sound the same. When Evelyn asked if everything was all right, her daughter brushed it off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just tired, Mom. Daniel's been working late. We're fine. Evelyn noticed other things, too. The way Daniel's phone would buzz, and he'd step outside to take calls in hushed tones. The way he'd flinch slightly when she mentioned finances, or how he seemed to linger near Richard's old study, where the family safe was kept. Once she caught him in there, standing by the bookshelf, pretending to admire a framed photo of Richard. He smiled, but his eyes were calculating, like he was memorizing something. A strange unease began to settle in Evelyn's chest. She tried to ignore it. She told herself she was being paranoid, overprotective. Maybe she was struggling to let Lena go, to accept that her daughter now belonged to someone else's world. But intuition, Evelyn had learned, was rarely wrong. One rainy evening, Evelyn sat alone in the living room, knitting by the fire. She heard voices from the kitchen, Lena and Daniel. Their tones were sharp, words cutting through the soft crackle of the fireplace. "Daniel, you promised," Lena began. "I said I'm handling it." He snapped quietly. "You don't need to worry about money. I just need a little more time." Evelyn froze, her hands pausing mid-stitch. Money? Why would Lena need to worry about that? She heard her daughter sigh heavily, her voice cracking. "You said you'd tell me the truth, Daniel. Please just be honest." Silence. Then Daniel's tone softened, smooth as silk. "Lena, you worry too much. I'm doing all this for us, for our future." Evelyn felt her stomach twist. Something wasn't right. That night, when she went to bed, her mind wouldn't rest. She replayed every detail, every strange look, every unexplained absence. The next morning, she noticed that one of her checkbooks was missing from the drawer beside her bed. When she confronted Lena gently, her daughter insisted Daniel had borrowed it to pay a repairman. Evelyn smiled and nodded. But inside, her doubts hardened into something sharper, something that whispered, asterisk, watch him. Asterisk, over the next few weeks, she started to notice patterns. Small amounts missing from her accounts, receipts she didn't recognize, jewelry slightly out of place. One afternoon, she found Daniel in her study again, claiming to look for an old photograph of Richard. His charm was unbreakable, but so was her growing suspicion. That night, Evelyn lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight spilled across her bed in silver lines, and the wind outside rattled the window pane softly. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. She closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. Footsteps. Slow, careful, coming closer. The door to her room opened, hinges sighing under the weight of secrecy. She could feel him, Daniel, standing there, watching. Her heart pounded, but she kept her breathing slow and even, feigning the rhythm of sleep. After a moment, she heard the quiet rustle of fabric, the muffled sound of a drawer sliding open, her drawer. Her hand tightened around the edge of her blanket. He was searching for something. Keys, maybe, the ones that opened the safe. The safe that contained her husband's will, old letters, and documents worth more than money, secrets Daniel could never imagine. Evelyn didn't move. She just listened. He paused, and then there was a soft gasp. The sound of realization, shock, maybe even fear. Whatever he saw inside that drawer, she knew it wasn't what he expected. And though she still hadn't opened her eyes, a faint, cold smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Because Evelyn Carter wasn't a fool. She had been planning for this moment far longer than Daniel could ever guess. The silence in Evelyn Carter's bedroom was so thick it felt alive. Only the faint ticking of the antique clock on her nightstand, and dared to break it steady, unbothered, counting down the seconds toward Daniel's undoing. He moved with care, trying not to disturb the sleeping woman in the bed. From where she lay, Evelyn could sense him, his shadow crossing the room, the quiet rustle of his breath, the controlled precision of a man who believed he was smarter than everyone around him. The drawer handle creaked softly under his grip. Daniel froze, glancing toward the bed. Evelyn's form remained still, her breathing soft and even. Convinced she was asleep, he exhaled slowly and pulled the drawer open. Inside, beneath a layer of neatly folded handkerchiefs, lay a small leather pouch, a tarnished silver keychain, and a bundle of old letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. The air seemed to thicken around him as he lifted the pouch. It was heavier than he expected. He unzipped it. Not cash, not jewelry, but photographs, dozens of them, each one older than the last. He flipped through them, frowning at faces he didn't recognize. Then he paused. His breath caught. There it was, a photograph that should not exist. A much younger version of himself, standing beside a woman with long auburn hair and a newborn baby in her arms. The woman was smiling, he was not. The background looked like a cheap motel room. His pulse thundered in his ears. He hadn't seen that photograph in over a decade. He thought he'd destroyed every trace of that life, of her asterisk. How, he set the photo down quickly, but the letters beneath it caught his attention. They were old, some written in the same delicate cursive that now haunted him. The handwriting of Margaret asterisk, the woman in the photo. The one he'd left behind without a word. The one who'd sworn she would make him pay for what he'd done. But Margaret was gone, dead. He'd made sure of that. Daniel's mouth went dry. His fingers trembled as he reached for another letter. This one addressed to Evelyn Carter asterisk, postmarked nearly 20 years ago. That name struck him like lightning. He tore it open. The words inside were careful, emotional, a plea from Margaret. If anything happens to me, please protect my child. You are the only one who knows the truth about Daniel Reese. Daniel's eyes widened. His real name, his old asterisk name, the one he'd buried with his past when he reinvented himself as Daniel Brooks. The paper slipped from his shaking hand, looking for something, Daniel. The voice was soft, almost gentle, but it cut through the darkness like a blade. He spun around. Evelyn sat upright in bed, eyes open, calm, sharp, and unblinking. The faintest smirk touched her lips as she flicked on the bedside lamp. Warm yellow light flooded the room, revealing Daniel caught like a thief in its glow. I thought you were asleep," he stammered, forcing a shaky laugh. "I needed the keys to the safe. Lena asked me to." Evelyn raised a hand, silencing him. "Don't insult my intelligence." For the first time since he met her, Daniel saw something in Evelyn's gaze that chilled him to his core. There was no fear there, no confusion, only certainty, the kind that comes from knowing the end of a story before anyone else does. "Sit down," she said quietly. He hesitated. "Sit down." Her tone left no room for argument. He obeyed, lowering himself onto the edge of the bed like a schoolboy caught stealing. The clock ticked on. "Do you know," Evelyn began softly, "what I've learned about people who lie, Daniel? They never notice how transparent they become once someone stops believing them." He opened his mouth to protest, but she continued, her voice steady and deliberate. "You've been lying to my daughter since the day you met her, and to me, about your job, your family, your past, even your name." Daniel forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I think you've misunderstood, Lena and I." "I know who you are," she interrupted. Daniel Reese, his world stopped. Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes locking on his. "Do you want to know how I found out? Margaret, the woman in that photograph, she was my friend, long before you came into our lives, before Richard died, before Lena even met you. Margaret came to me once, terrified. She told me about the man she'd fallen for, charming, handsome, persuasive, a man who promised her the world and left her with nothing but a child and a trail of debt. She told me his name was Daniel Reese." Daniel's jaw tightened. His body tensed, ready to defend, deny, deceive. But Evelyn wasn't finished. She disappeared a few weeks later. Evelyn continued, voice soft but firm. "The police said it was suicide. I didn't believe that. I never did." She reached for the drawer, pulling out a small leather-bound notebook. "After Richard's death, I started looking into things again, and imagine my surprise when I saw your face in Lena's engagement photos, the same man from Margaret's pictures. You changed your last name, of course, changed everything else too, but not your eyes." Daniel's heartbeat pounded so loudly he could hear it echoing in his ears. He wanted to speak, to twist the story somehow, but every word died on his tongue. Evelyn's calm unnerved him more than anger ever could. "I didn't say anything at first," she said. "I wanted proof, so I watched. I let you believe I was the kind, naive widow. I let you into my home, my family, my trust, because that's what people like you feed on. And now?" She opened the notebook to a page filled with dates, transactions, and photographs of Daniel meeting with strangers, withdrawing money, lying through every smile. "Now," she said quietly, "I have everything I need." Daniel stood suddenly, his face pale. "You don't understand. I understand perfectly," Evelyn said, rising from the bed. Her voice dropped to a whisper that carried more weight than a shout. "You thought I was sleeping, but I've been wide awake for a long time." For a long moment, they stood in silence, predator and prey, though Daniel could no longer tell which he was. Finally, Evelyn took the photo of him and Margaret from the nightstand and held it up. "This is the real you, the man who ruins lives for profit, the man who almost destroyed mine years ago without ever knowing it." His eyes darted to hers. "Yours?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "You never realized, did you? Margaret's child, the one you abandoned, wasn't just anyone's daughter." Daniel's stomach dropped. "No," he whispered. "Yes." Evelyn said, "She's my niece, the same age as Lena, and you tried to steal from the same bloodline twice." The room spun. Daniel felt the walls close in, the air grow thin. For the first time he saw Evelyn not as a fragile widow, but as something far more dangerous. Her voice was calm as she said, "Now, Daniel, we're going to find out just how sorry a man like you can be." Daniel's throat went dry. He could hear the ticking clock again, each second like a hammer blow echoing in his skull. Evelyn stood before him, calm and unyielding, the photograph still trembling slightly between her fingers. He wanted to deny everything, to twist the story into something believable, but Evelyn's gaze was too sharp, too knowing. There was nowhere left to hide. "I don't know what you think you've discovered," he said finally, his voice thin and brittle. "But you've got it wrong. Margaret, she lied about everything. Stop." Evelyn's tone cut through the air like a knife. "Don't you dare speak her name as if you didn't destroy her." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You don't know what happened." "Oh, I do." Evelyn took a step closer, her voice trembling not with fear, but with years of restrained fury. "I know about the money you took from her. I know how you promised her a future, took out loans in her name, left her with nothing but a baby and a mountain of debt. And when she threatened to go to the police, you made her disappear." "That's not true," he hissed, though the sweat on his forehead betrayed him. "Evelyn ignored him. She was my sister, Daniel." He froze. Evelyn's voice broke slightly on the word *sister*, but her eyes never left his. "Half-sister, actually. We weren't close when we were young. We grew apart, she made mistakes, fell in with the wrong people, but she was still family, and when she wrote to me all those years ago, terrified and alone, I promised I'd protect her. I never got the chance." Daniel stepped back, his face pale. "You're lying," he said weakly. "If she was your sister, you would have gone to the police." Evelyn's expression darkened. "I did. They found nothing. They said she took her own life. I knew better, but I didn't have proof back then." She turned and opened the safe Daniel had been so desperate to reach. From inside, she withdrew a thick folder bound in twine. She dropped it on the bed between them. The folder burst open, spilling photographs, receipts, and newspaper clippings. "Do you know what this is?" she asked. He didn't answer. "This is your trail." There were photos of Daniel under his old name, Daniel Reese *, in different cities with different women. Each one followed by reports of missing money, broken engagements, and in one case, a woman hospitalized after an accident. Then came the final piece, a police report from 15 years ago. *** car accident, victim Richard Carter. *** driver, Daniel Reese alias, *** charges, dismissed, lack of evidence. *** Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. His legs almost gave way beneath him. "That's impossible," he whispered. "That was." "An accident?" Evelyn's voice trembled now, but her control never faltered. "You think I don't remember the man who hit my husband's car and fled into the night? I never saw your face then, but I remembered the description, the height, the eyes, the scar on your wrist, and when Lena brought you home for the first time, I knew." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that chilled him to the bone. "You didn't just ruin Margaret's life, you ended my husband's." Daniel staggered backward, shaking his head. No, you can't prove." "Oh, but I can." She lifted her phone from the nightstand. "That folder isn't just paper, Daniel. It's connected to a digital archive, evidence gathered over months. Emails, financial records, even a witness statement from the mechanic who repaired your car the day after the accident. You paid him in cash to replace a shattered headlight and repaint the bumper. The same model, the same color, the same night Richard died." His mind was spinning now, panic clawing at his throat. "You've been spying on me," he said hoarsely. "You set me up. I protected my daughter." Evelyn replied, "I protected the only thing I have left." The sound of quiet sobbing came from the hallway. Daniel turned, startled. Lena stood there, pale, trembling, her eyes wide and wet with tears. She'd heard everything. "Mom," she whispered. Her voice cracked like a glass breaking. "Is it true?" Evelyn's heart clenched. She hadn't wanted her daughter to find out like this. But maybe fate had chosen the right moment after all. "Yes, sweetheart," she said softly, "it's true." Lena turned to Daniel, her face twisted with disbelief and grief. "Tell me she's wrong. Tell me you didn't." Daniel reached for her, desperation in his eyes. "Lena, please, I love you. Whatever your mother thinks she knows, it's twisted. I made mistakes before, yes, but that's not who I am now. I changed." Lena stepped back. "You killed my father." He shook his head violently. "It was an accident. I didn't even know it was him. He stopped, realizing the weight of his own words. Evelyn's expression didn't waver. "You didn't even know who you hit. That makes it better." He said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Lena's sobs grew harsher, and she stumbled back against the doorframe, clutching it as if to keep herself from falling. The man she had built her life around had not only lied to her, he had destroyed her family long before she ever met him. Evelyn's voice softened now, filled with a strange, sorrowful calm. "You thought you could steal from me, Daniel. You thought I was weak. But you walked into the home of the woman whose life you already shattered. I've spent years piecing together the truth. Every photograph, every lie, every missing dollar. I wanted you to feel safe before I tore it all away." Daniel's shoulders slumped. He looked small now, defeated, a con artist caught in the web of his own deceit. "Evelyn," he murmured, "please don't ruin me." She studied him quietly. Then she said something he never expected. "Ruin you? Oh, Daniel, you've done that yourself." Her words hung in the air like smoke. Then she turned to Lena. "Go upstairs, darling. You shouldn't see what comes next." But Lena shook her head. "No, I need to hear it." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Then you'll hear everything." She turned back to Daniel. "Tomorrow morning you'll go to the police. You'll confess to everything, the fraud, the false identity, the hit, and run, every single crime you've buried. I'll hand them my files and recordings as well. If you don't, I'll release it all myself." Daniel's eyes widened. "You'd destroy your daughter's life with a scandal like that." Evelyn's voice was ice. "No, Daniel. I'll save her life from you." There was silence for a long moment. The clock ticked. The rain outside began again, tapping against the windowpane, a soft, relentless cleansing. Finally, Daniel nodded once, defeated. "Fine, you win," he muttered, "but you'll regret it." Evelyn tilted her head, her gaze sharp as glass. "I already regret ever letting you through my door." As he turned to leave the room, she added quietly, "And Daniel, you should know I never sleep as deeply as you think." He froze in the doorway, his back stiff, then left without a word. Evelyn waited until his footsteps faded down the hall before her knees finally gave out. She sank onto the edge of the bed, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Lena ran to her, wrapping her arms around her mother. They stayed like that for a long time, two women bound by love, pain, and a truth that had finally clawed its way to the surface. When Evelyn finally spoke again, her voice was steady. "Justice isn't loud, Lena. It's patient, it waits, and when it comes, it's always exactly on time." Morning came quietly, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The sun broke through the curtains of Evelyn's home, flooding the living room with pale light. The scent of coffee lingered untouched. The air was still, heavy with the weight of what had happened the night before. Evelyn sat by the window, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Her face was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes only after a storm has torn everything apart. She had barely slept, but she wasn't tired. There was a strange peace inside her now. Upstairs, she could hear the faint sound of Lena moving about, the hesitant steps of someone whose world had just been rewritten. Every so often, Evelyn caught a muffled sob, and her heart broke a little more. No mother wants to see her child in pain, even when the truth is the only way to save her. By 8 o'clock, Daniel came downstairs. He looked like a ghost. The confident charm that once radiated from him was gone. His shirt was wrinkled, his face pale and drawn. His eyes darted nervously around the room before settling on Evelyn. He forced a weak smile. "Evelyn, about last night." She turned to face him. "Sit down." He hesitated, then obeyed. The chair creaked under his weight. Evelyn studied him in silence for a long moment. "Did you sleep?" she asked softly. "No," he muttered. "Good," she said. "Neither did I." He looked at her, confused. There was no malice in her tone, only something measured, deliberate, almost sorrowful, that frightened him more than anger ever could. "I've thought about what you said," he began, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'll confess, I'll go to the police. I just need time to prepare." Evelyn's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Time is the one thing you no longer have." She reached for the small safe key resting on the coffee table and unlocked a black box beside her. Inside lay a tiny digital recorder, its red light blinking softly. She pressed play. The room filled with the sound of Daniel's own voice from last night, his confession, his lies unraveling, his admission that he'd hit Richard's car, every word captured in perfect clarity. Daniel's eyes widened. You recorded me." Evelyn nodded. "You thought I was bluffing when I said I had everything. I wanted you to have one last chance to tell the truth yourself. You failed." He shot to his feet, his face twisting in fury. "You had no right. I had every right." Evelyn snapped, her calm finally cracking. "You killed my husband. You lied to my daughter. You stole from me and thought I was too old, too soft, too blind to notice. You made a career out of taking advantage of people who loved you." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with power. "And you thought you'd get away with it again." Daniel's fists clenched at his sides. "If you release that recording, you'll destroy Lena. She'll be humiliated. Everyone will know what kind of man she married." Evelyn rose slowly from her chair, her eyes level with his. "I don't care what people think of her. I care that she finally sees what kind of man you are." Before Daniel could respond, a knock came at the door. He froze. Evelyn didn't move. 2 uniformed officers stood outside, their expressions neutral but firm. Behind them was a woman in a dark suit, Detective Harper. The officer Evelyn had been corresponding with for months, quietly collecting evidence. Daniel's face went white. "You called them." Evelyn met his eyes. "Last night, while you were sleeping, I sent them everything to your confession, the files, the witness statements. I told them to come this morning." He turned to run, but Harper was faster. Within seconds, Daniel's wrists were in handcuffs. He struggled once, twice, then went still. The fight left him as suddenly as it had begun. He looked at Evelyn one last time, hatred and fear swirling in his eyes. "You think you've won," he hissed. "You'll regret this, I swear." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "No, Daniel, you'll regret ever meeting me. The officers led him out, his curses fading down the hall until only silence remained. Lena appeared on the staircase, pale and trembling. Her hands gripped the railing, as though it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Is it over?" she whispered. Evelyn looked up at her daughter, her beautiful, broken daughter, and nodded. "Yes, my love, it's over." Lena came down the stairs slowly and sank beside her mother. For a long while neither of them spoke. The house felt hollow, stripped of the poison that had infected it, yet still echoing with the ghosts of all that had been lost. Finally Lena spoke, her voice raw. "How did you stay so calm through all of it?" Evelyn smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "Because I knew the truth would always come out. It always does eventually. You can bury it, hide it, lock it away in drawers and safes, but it waits, just like I did." Lena's tears fell freely now. "I thought I loved him, Mom. I really did." "I know," Evelyn whispered, pulling her daughter into her arms. "And that's what makes you human. You gave him trust, love, the things he didn't deserve. But what matters is that you survived him. They stayed like that as the morning light grew brighter, washing the room in gold. It felt different now, no longer soft and comforting, but cleansing. Like the world was quietly beginning again. Later that afternoon, Detective Harper returned. She thanked Evelyn for her cooperation and assured her that Daniel would be facing multiple charges: fraud, identity theft, and vehicular homicide. His confession had sealed his fate. As the detective left, she paused at the door. "You're a strong woman, Mrs. Carter," she said. "Not many people could do what you did." Evelyn smiled, weary but resolute. "Strength isn't something you're born with, detective. It's something life forces you to build." That night Evelyn walked alone into her garden. The roses swayed gently in the evening breeze, their petals trembling under the starlight. She looked up at the sky, at the stars that glittered faintly through the thin clouds. For the first time in years, she whispered her husband's name aloud. "Richard," she said softly, "it's done. He can't hurt us any more." A tear slid down her cheek, warm and quiet. Behind her, Lena stepped out onto the porch, watching her mother in silence. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The bond between them, fractured by loss and deception, had been reforged in the fire of truth. Evelyn turned back toward her, her voice gentle. "Come inside, darling. It's getting cold." As they walked together back into the house, the moonlight spilled across the threshold like a benediction. In the hallway, Evelyn paused by her bedroom door. She glanced at the drawer, the one Daniel had opened. It stood slightly ajar now, empty of its secrets. She closed it carefully, turning the key once, locking it for good. Some doors, she thought, should stay closed forever, but some, like the door to truth, to peace, were always worth opening.